Definitely no shortage of projects to take place here on the channel, here in the shed shop. And this wacky, weird, vintage, I don't know what year, Guru number 3.7 frame set that I have plans to do a cool vintage mountain bike resto mod with like modern drivetrain components, decent wheels, cool other parts, is zero exception. I was given this frame, my friend Ian, he's been on the channel before. They were downsizing from their house they were renting to a smaller apartment. They needed some space. This was one of the things that was cut from the take with list. But just as of recently, and almost completely due to the fact that we just refinished the entire finish on the Rockhopper, which turned out so good, it very much renewed my interest in working on like older stuff and like trying to make it look kind of cool, breathe some new life back into it. And just completely based on the positivity and the way the refinishing of the Rockhopper was received, I kind of thought there'd be no better time to introduce this thing to the lineup, doing the same thing, trying to restore the finish on this, bring it back to life a little bit, and give the requested rundown on products used and a little bit of the process for taking a bike that looks like this, so beat up, to what the Rockhopper kind of looks like now. This one's a little worse for wear. We probably won't get to that level, but there will be a noticeable difference once we're done. My process for polishing paint, like restoring the finish of a bike, is a 5-step process. And they go in this order. It's the same as washing a car. If you watch any car detailing channel, they'll say the same thing. I'll wash the entire bike with degreasing dish soap. The reason you want to use degreasing is because it helps lift everything off. Once this entire process is done, you don't want to use this again because it'll strip the wax off. You want to use like automotive wash. Step 2 is a clay bar kit. You can buy these from all sorts of different places. The steps for doing it are on the back, so we don't really need to go over the details at all. So you do a whole clay bar over the bike. The next step I do is a harder cut rubbing compound with a random orbital sander and this pad. This will take out some of the like medium-sized scratches and any of the scuffs that are on the bike. In my opinion, this is the difference maker. After you do this, that's where the exciting things happen. This stuff just finishes it off. Next is polishing with a different pad on the same orbital sander. It does the same job as the rubbing compound, just for finer imperfections. And then step 5 is your wax for protecting all of your hard work. Okay, so step 1, dead simple, hot water, dish detergent, and like any rag you have. You just wash it. So I think somewhat unsurprisingly, your initial degreaser wash is really going to be the first exposure as to what sort of condition whatever frame you're working on really is in. And in our case, you know, this thing has definitely lived a fairly tough life. Which in the grand scheme of things probably makes sense for this bike. As far as I understand, and this information is fairly foreign to me, Guru was a Montreal-based custom bike builder. So at some point, this was somebody's custom mountain bike that they probably had endless hours and endless days of good times, and it shows in the areas where it certainly would have been ridden. And then the unfortunate part is, like, for the fun, hard life that it lived, it got put away. It just got kind of thrown to a spot. That allowed for stuff like this to happen, for surface rust to start. There's probably some like rock chips or stuff that would have started the rust in these areas, maybe a couple crashes, who knows. And then from putting too much power down, you know, there's little nicks and scratches and stuff here as well. Also, we've fully exposed the welds on this thing. I probably wouldn't write home about them. Anyway, if I had any sort of like true attachment to this thing, say it was like my custom bike from whenever it was built, this would be a good candidate more for a respray than just for trying to bring it back to life. But for this example, we're going to continue on with step 2, clay bar. I know you guys get a little bit caught up on wanting to use exactly what I use. This is the Simon Is clay bar kit. I believe Simon is like a company that only sells to Canadian Tire. I'll throw a link to another clay bar that you could get on Amazon. And don't be too intimidated by clay barring. I know I was at first, but it's literally just, you just spray this stuff on it and then you rub the clay bar across it. It'll pick up the contaminants. Nothing to be concerned about. Now, whatever clay bar kit you get, and I recommend you get a kit because it gives you instructions, follow those instructions and just do the whole bike. Obviously, after step 2 of clay barring your bike, making sure all microscopic contaminants are removed from the frame, well, now it's time to jump up to step 3. And that's putting rubbing compound onto this. And for honestly the best result, using a random like orbital sander like I've got. You can do this by hand, but it is a hateful thing to do. So obviously for step 3, you've got a rubbing compound. Basically what this is a harsher cut than the polishing compound. What that does is just break down some of the clear coat really and bring that level down to some of the more medium scratches. Smooths everything out, and you do that with the appropriate, whether it's hand applicator or your Velcroed on sander applicator. I have done this in the past with like a microfiber cloth, and that works pretty good too. I'm gonna link to this, or at least something similar that I would buy myself. Following step 3, that's the rubbing compound step that we just finished, you can really start to see what kind of quality of paint and finish that you're working with. Now this does look good. Obviously it is a huge improvement of the dust-covered, rusty, terribly stored version that we started with, but my suspicion with this thing is that it's probably a single stage paint, and that becomes a little more evident when you look at how much red came off while we were using the rubbing compound. And well, our current evidence kind of points to no extra layer of clear coat. But I don't want that to sound discouraging. This is still worthwhile doing. You can definitely tell that there's a significant difference here from where we started to where we are now. The paint we have here is without a doubt noticeably smoother and shinier, looking way better after step 3. Step 4 is honestly just a repeat of step 3 with a finer grit polishing compound and a slightly different applicator. Again, I'm linking below to the stuff that I use. If you feel more comfortable just using exactly what I've got, you can get them down below. But any proper polishing compound will work. The most satisfying part of each step is actually removing off the compound that you just put on. There's always that little layer of dullness that's still there from it being like wiped in. And when you get to buff it off and reveal the shiny smoothness underneath, that's just like... If this thing didn't have these like rust blotches up here, I don't know that I'd really consider this needing a respray. Step 5 is, in my opinion, the finishing step. This is your protective wax layer. Protects all your hard work. Applying wax, whatever style you decide, is pretty simple. You just get in there, put it on the frame, buff it in, let it kind of dry to a haze, and then buff it off with a microfiber cloth. So that's the front triangle. As the wax kind of starts to dry to a bit of a haze, we can start to think about wiping it off. So we've got a hazy top tube, and now a really shiny one. And that's it. Once you've got all the residual wax wiped off of there, this is the time where you just kind of like sit and look at what you just did. So, I know we just did this with the rock hopper, but there was a lot of questions on like the products I use, what the process really is. So I didn't want to leave anybody with those questions hanging. Not to mention, like, this thing's ridiculous, and I've been looking for an excuse to introduce it to the channel. This seemed like the best way to do it. My favorite thing about refinishing paint or detailing in general is that with enough time and a little bit of patience, anyone can do it. It still turned out 1,000 times better than where we started. It's still really shiny. The wax still gives it that nice smooth finish. Kind of a bit of a bummer on the lack of quality on the welds of this thing, but for the bizarre shape and like the really unknown history of this, what I assume is a custom Guru mountain bike frame, probably from the very early 90s, it's still kind of a cool candidate for being built up and ridden a little bit on this channel. But that build up will take time. It's not going to happen in this video, so if you want to see it, you're gonna have to subscribe.